Welcome one more day to space in Harmonia. Today it's a good day to ponder deeply on the image on which we have to be made, little by little. Because it seems humanity is being completely distorted, made in the image of the beast which is fed by the dragon, the old draconian fallen intelligence that leads to destruction. And we have to remember the image, the real image that must constitute the true human nature, if we can speak that way, having in mind the primordial man, the pattern, the canon, the logos. So let me have a walk and explain all this to you, because it's very important. And I think being surrounded by the sounds of birds, the colors of this fallen nature, is still very inspiring. And it can help us understand what is the true logos. Is this world made in the image of the divine, or made in the image of fallen Elohim, fallen forces of nature, the stars and planets that became somehow disconnected from the primordial source? And what about humanity? Are we made in the image of God, as religious people say? And what God is that? I will leave an article in the blog in which you will find very interesting quotes from ancient sages. Even the book of Zohar speaks of something which we have to remember, and it has to do with the essence, the nature of the primordial man. The primordial man is an idea which has been somehow distorted, it's diffuse, very few are able to explain precisely what it is. So the aim of this video is to shed light on it, so we can see how the primordial man can be considered in an abstract form, as in philosophy, theology, Kabbalistic teachings, or we can understand it as the prototype that was already demonstrated by the universal master who came here and incarnated, showing the pattern of that universal prototype, which is also an archetype. And I will bring to mention a specific passage in the book of Zohar. But first of all, let's consider that the so-called primordial man has been popularized as Adam Kadmon, especially in the world of Kabbalah, even though that expression is from the Middle Ages. In ancient times, most of the references to the primordial man understand it as the celestial man, the Adam from above, Adam Ilah, as it appears in the book of Zohar, the book of splendor. It's also known as Adam Elyon, the higher man. Blessed is he whose countenance mirrors the countenance of the man from above. This is expressed in the book of Zohar. And it's because we have to be made in the image of that man. Made in the image means that we acquire his inner personality, which manifests outside, without shadow. Because the shadow is the likeness. Image and likeness belongs to a fallen world, in which there is a division between inner and outer, image and shadow. But in the true world, in the true reality there are no shadows. The true man has no shadow. He is pure. He is the expression of the divine essence, which is hidden, so to say, and it must be unveiled, unfolded, like a seed becoming a tree. So here we have the basic patterns with which we can understand what we are talking about, because everything we are seeing here came from a seed. The trees, all plants, and of course this is because there is a pattern copied, originated from the primordial reality. Even though all this is part of an accident, it preserves some pattern from which we can learn, and the tree is one of the best patterns. Think, for instance, in the divine essence. When I say think, it's just to make myself understandable, because we cannot really think profoundly about the divine essence, because it's beyond any thought. But we can try to conceive what this essence is. And there is a passage in the book of Zohar which says that the Ancient of Days has 3 heads, and these 3 heads are 3 archetypes which show one another, so they are somehow helping each other to tell about the different aspects of that divine essence. And in these 3 heads we have several levels. The most profound is known as Ain, nothing, because, as I said, it's nothing we can think of. The other level is the Ancient One. It's known as the Ancient One because it's part of a radiance and a splendor that is more ancient than anything you can think of, even though it's not affected by time. And the most external head, so to say, is known as hidden wisdom. You'll find that passage in the blog, and this is very interesting because here we are told that the Ancient of Days has several layers, several degrees of manifestation that tell about each other. And the so-called hidden wisdom reminds very much of when Apostle Paul said that the Christos, the Anointed One, is the splendor, wisdom of the invisible God and the power of God. There are other passages where he says that the Christos, the Anointed One, is the image of the invisible God. And this means this image has to do with a personality which has always existed in the splendor of the unmanifested divine essence, which is known as non-existence, not because it doesn't exist, but because existence implies existence. Ex is outwardly or from, and sistens come from sistere, to stay outside. So things exist because there is a profound essence which is pure being, and in a sense it doesn't exist in the way we think it exists, like things exist because there is beingness, not the other way around. This is a way of expressing this wisdom by using metaphysical terms, ontological terms, such as being, non-being. It was even expressed by Greek sages. Parmenides of Elea said that there is only being, that's the only reality. There is not non-being. There cannot be something which exists in itself and disappears. Everything we see is just an appearance, the product of imagination, dualistic heads, bicephalic heads, as he said in his poem. And that's precisely what we are talking about when approaching the idea of the primordial essence, which is considered to be the first head, the unmanifested head in Kabbalistic teachings. And this unmanifested head has a splendor, a radiance, known as the Ancient Holy One, which is part of the Ancient of Days, more ancient than this poor tree, which seems completely dry out, even though it has leaves. It's very creepy. Now, in this splendor of the divine and manifested essence, we cannot speak of manifestation either. We can speak of being, and being is the principle of manifestation. Things are because there is a dynamis, a dynamic force that makes things flourish. And this dynamic force of being is precisely what was expressed as the dynamis of God, the power of God, and the wisdom of God. Because when someone or something is aligned with the divine essence, it cannot just flourish as it pleases. There is a pattern, a logos, a logic, and that's precisely our model. We cannot be in contact directly with the Ancient of Days in his unmanifested stages. We must get into contact with an image and model that has already been demonstrated, the prototype. And this is exactly what Master Yeshua, or Ishu, did 2000 years ago. He marked the pattern in the image of which we have to be made, not only spiritually and psychologically, but also physically. Why not? Because our physical expression must be an expression of our soul and our spirit. But of course, this implies we have to get out of the labyrinth of the mind, which is very much like this labyrinth. We must find the points in which we lose the inner sight, the inner remembrance, the remembrance of what we really are as expressions of the primordial man. Because it's obvious that we have a fallen nature that comes from the serpent. And when this fallen nature is fed, is promoted, then we are made in the image of the beast. And the beast only leads to destruction because it has the dragon on its basis. And this is what we are seeing nowadays. We are seeing a confusion between two different natures. One illegitimate and another legitimate. So it's up to us what we want to accept in our life. We have to remember this over and over again. For that we need each other. For that we need to remind ourselves, even if no one is interested in this. That's one of the reasons I make these videos. In the Spanish-speaking world there are more views. In the English-speaking world there are very little views, maybe because it's not too well known. But this view will be more popular in some years ahead, because what we are living is the gradual manifestation of the primordial man on earth in each one of us. We are the body of the primordial man, or more precisely, we are the body of the image of the primordial man, because the primordial man, remember, in principle is pure light, is pure radiance, and this radiance has an image, a logos. That logos is precisely what Master Issue was expressing. Even in the book of John we read that in the beginning was the logos, and the logos was before God, and it was God because it's part of, it's a fusion, it's emanation, and we must be made in the image of that logos, because the logos became flesh to give us a chance of becoming sons of God, as it was expressed. Even though the expression Son of God is very vague, we are divine sons in the depths of ourselves. But in terms of behavior, in terms of external manifestation, humanity very often behaves like sons of Satan. And there are satanic intelligences that would love to see humanity completely fallen and destroyed. There are timelines in which humanity has been destroyed. So we have to understand, really, our mission as ambassadors of the primordial message. Because as soon as we assume there is something in us which does not belong to this world, then we no longer should regard ourselves as fallen sinners, as people who do not have autonomy, will, conscience. No, that's in our being, but we have to find it again and actualize, realize these potencies, these dynames, as they were known in Greek, dynamics, the forces of our being. For instance, I have been fasting for more than 16 hours for now. I don't have the need to eat now. I was trying to generate an impulse to give a shock in the body and generate certain processes. This, of course, is done by means of the will the Holy One gave me. And one of the first actions made by the primordial man is fasting. This is known as tzimtzum. Tzum in Hebrew is fasting, and tzimtzum is a sort of contraction which has to do with the power of manifestation. In order to manifest something, the Holy One must retrieve part of the infinite light, so that part of the light can find the way back and make the journey of self-discovery. This is how love becomes immortal. Someone said that the divine plays hide and seek with itself. And in a sense, this is true, because the divine is somehow trying to find a way back from these fallen worlds, which were really generated by Elohim, the forces of nature, and not the Logos directly. Actually, if you go to the first sentence in the Torah, in the book of Genesis, you will find the Son and the Father, the Ancient of Days, and the only begotten Son in the first word, Bereshit. First of all, Bereshit can be read as principle in the beginning, but also in the head. Beit is a letter that means house, and Rosh is head, but we can also read it as Beit Reshit, two principles, two beginnings, which in my view are the Father and the Son. Now we can translate it as with wisdom, because Reshit is also a principle of wisdom, at least in the Hebrew language. Even in our language, when we say we behave in accord with principles, we are implying that we have certain wisdom, but we also need understanding, and that's the principle of assimilation. Therefore, with wisdom, something was generated. Bara can be translated as created, but remember, the creation can be ex nihilo, or out of a matter that already exists, the infinite substance known as ether. And the ether is behind all this. We are somehow made of ether in the most profound level of ourselves. However, we forgot that we are made of the infinite substance. We think we are made of dense matter because there is constriction, and this constriction comes from Elohim. So the first sentence in the Torah says, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. In the beginning, the Father and the Son generated Elohim, the heavens and the earth was tohu babohu, which means in a state of chaos and empty. The void was generated not because of the Father and the Son, but because the Elohim forgot about the Father and the Son. This is a view which is not very popular, because even in Hebrew roots, you will hear people say that we must be made in the image of Elohim. But no, we are made in the image of fallen Elohim. Our body contains the whole universe. We are made of stardust. That was said by Carl Sagan. And precisely, we must remember the true Logos, which is beyond Elohim. Even there is a passage where we read, I am Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, and there is no Elohim with me. This is mentioned in the book of Zohar, because the Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh is the universal body of expression, the body of the Ancient of Days, which has head, torso, and also extremities. Those would be the worlds of Elohim, galaxies with suns, planets, and it's precisely in those extremities, in those limbs, where the fall took place. So the Adam mentioned in the book of Genesis was made in the image of stars and planets, not in the image of the true divine Son, which must be the canon, the Logos, the true expression of the Father. In Hebrew, this was known as Atik Yomim, the Ancient of Days, which has an Arikampin, a great face, and Seirampin, little face. And the problem took place in the little face of planets that were governed by draconian architects, the so-called sons of Edom, the kings of Edom that lost their bodies. This is why they are now the hidden dragon in other dimensions, trying to make humanity in their own image. And they made a beast, which is somehow expressed in wars, conflicts, in the degeneration we see all over humanity. So we have to be very careful about what we think, what we feel, because we can slip very easily into the image of the beast and worship the beast, becoming idolaters. And some people think there are white hats supporting humanity, leading humanity to better timelines. But they say these white hats that belong to secret organizations, and they support even politicians like Trump or Putin. This would be using even war and technology in order to bring light into the earth. And I think this is very dangerous. I heard about this the other day, listening to an ex-British politician known as Simon Parkes. And he was saying that what Putin was really doing is fighting some rebellious military groups that belong to the deep state. And they were building an atomic bomb, according to him. And Putin would be part of the white hats, in his view. Just as Trump would be part of the white hats, battling against the deep state. And this is a very popular idea nowadays. Some people are even happy that there might be white hats helping certain timelines, claiming that they are the saviors of humanity. And I think all this is part of a very ancient lineage of light that descends from fallen Adam, or at least from Adamic lines that were still trying to reconnect with the source. The problem is that the source can still be Elohim and not the primordial source. There are two sources. New Agers say, let's go back to source. Which one? I would ask. Do you want to go back into the stars? Into another solar system with a paradise? Or do you really want to be the body, the manifestation of the primordial man? The light of the Logos was the light of men, says the book of John. Because we have to be led by our head. The ancient Holy One is the head of the Messiah, the Christos, and anoints him with his light, his splendor. And the image of the Holy One is our head. This means we must obey an inner personality, which is so full of love that we would never fight against the evil ones externally or bring certain technologies. Some people think technology can be helping humanity to evolve, but don't forget that technology came from the serpent and it replaced our real capacity to use the organic light without limits. Those who belong to the Kadmon, to the primordial man, do not need technology to travel across the universe. They can travel with Merkabas without using any vehicle which is external. So I very much doubt about the white hat theory. That's part of Babylon. That's duality. And I don't doubt there have been organizations fighting for humanity. We can think of the battles of Israel. King David was a murderer. King Solomon was a murderer. The Templars were also murderers. At least many of them fought for God and Christ. And they were defending the Christians in Holy Land, as they call it. All when in the New Testament we don't hear about taking the sword to make battle. Actually, when the Master was captured by the Romans, Peter took his sword and wanted to fight them. And the Master said, "Put your sword down, because he who kills with iron is killed by iron." So if you take a sword and kill someone with a sword, maybe in this life you won't die with the sword, but your soul will be recycled and it will be put in another person that will be killed with a sword. It's cause and effect, the law of karma. And Master Ishu came to take us out of the law of karma. So we have to step back, get out of duality, and think out of the box. Don't think humanity is completely lost without violent defenders. There are ways of defending humanity with the primordial light, not with the fallen light of Adamic organizations that want to bring wisdom and some light as they understand it. I will ponder more deeply about this probably in the following video. And as I don't want to make this any longer, thank you very much for listening. I will leave an article with more details about all this. And remember, we have to be made in the image of the primordial Logos, the image of the Holy One. So, in that way, we are made not only in the image of our Master, but also in the image of the Ancient of Days, the Granddad. Because we have a Granddad which is obviously beyond anything we can conceive. However, we can be approached to him by the universal Son. No one comes to the Father except through me. I and the Father are one. So, by imitating or resonating with the love of the Son, we can really be healed, be reconnected to the fullness inside, in spite of the emptiness that surrounds everything. Even the animals feel some emptiness, and this is why they are full of passions, just as the human being. Therefore, in order to be healed and find completeness, we have to remember the divine essence which is pulsating right here and now. And remember, it has an image without shadow. Regardless of our fallen nature, which is made in the image and likeness of fallen Elohim, the broken world of clashing stars and galaxies, the world studied by the so-called science, another way of idolatry. Anyway, there you have the article in the blog Song of Reality, themusicofwisdom.blogspot.com, and let's keep feeling deeply to express the primordial love and modified life, integral conscience, and deep blissful serenity.